Okay, so good afternoon, and we are back with yet another revision session on the inheritance tax part in your ATX exam. Now, in your 100 marks of ATX paper, out of which there are 20 professional marks and 80 technical marks, you can expect around 15 to 18 marks worth of inheritance tax questions. The questions, the topics on inheritance tax will be scattered throughout the paper. It's not as if it can be tested only in section B or it is tested only in section A. It's not like that. It can be tested in any of the sections, and sometimes or most times when it comes in section B, it's CGT and IHT together. Okay, we'll also see the interaction between the two taxes, but first of all, let's quickly understand what all is covered in the inheritance tax discussion. Now, inheritance tax is basically a tax on transfer of value of a chargeable property by a chargeable person. So, in all of the inheritance tax questions, the first thing that you should calculate is the transfer of value. And how is this transfer of value calculated? Transfer of value is value of the estate before the transfer minus value of the estate after the transfer. Who is a chargeable person? A chargeable person is an individual and trustees of certain trust. Examination questions are only going to focus on individuals. What is a chargeable property? All property to which a person is beneficially entitled is chargeable property, and it forms a part of the person's estate. अब आईएचटी का ओवरसीज एस्पेक्ट हमने कल के डिस्कशन में देख लिया था. ठीक है. नाउ whenever you have to calculate the transfer of value, remember, calculate the value of the estate before the transfer, compare that with the value of the estate after the transfer. The difference between these two is your transfer of value. Don't get down into calculating 15,000 shares into 20 rupees. You should get the value before the transfer, compare it with the value after the transfer. That specific difference is your amount which is going to enter your IHT calculations. Now, there are quite a few lifetime gifts which are exempt. There is the small gift exemption, maximum amount of £250 per individual per tax year. But if the amount of gift is more than £250, the entire amount becomes taxable. So if I give a gift to Sean worth £240, then that amount is exempt. But if I give him a gift of £260, then full 260 is subject to IHT, not just the part in excess of 250. ठीक है. अब marriage or civil partnership, gifts received on occasion of marriage or civil partnership up to the limits mentioned are exempt. What are the limits that they have mentioned? £5,000 from a parent on occasion of a marriage, £2,500 from a grandparent party to a marriage, that is the wife or the husband gifts it to you, or £1,000 from anyone else. That is basically the amount of lifetime gifts which become exempt. So during on the occasion of marriage, these gifts are exempt. Then normal expenditure out of income, if say a grandfather is paying life insurance policy of the grandchild, he is paying the premium for that every year and he does that as a routine activity, then again that is not considered as transfer of value and is not subject to inheritance tax. There is an annual exemption of £3,000 per year. This is for the entire year. It is not given gift wise. An annual exemption of 1 year, if it is unused, can be carried forward to the next year. The annual exemption of £3,000 has to be applied against all gifts in a chronological order. So even if you make a potentially exempt transfer first and then you make a chargeable lifetime transfer later, the difference between these two, uh, so if you make a PET first and a CLT later, the AE will be adjusted against the potentially exempt transfer first, although that is not taxable immediately. Then there is inter-spouse exemption. Transfers between an individual and spouse or partner in a registered civil partnership are exempt, whether they are made during lifetime or on death. There is no maximum limit for such transfers unless the transferor is UK domicile. The transferee spouse or civil partner is not UK domicile, and the upper limit is £3,25,000. So if both spouses are UK domicile, then there is no upper limit on the inter-spouse exemption. We also call it an exempt legacy. But if the transferor spouse is UK domicile and the transferee spouse is not UK domicile, then there is an upper limit on the amount of inter-spouse exemption. ठीक है, that is 3,25,000. Political party exemption, gifts to a political party, amounts given to a charity are exempt, and gifts for public benefit or for national purposes, these are exempt. Okay, these gifts are exempt when they are given at any point in time and the limits are given to you. Then there are certain gifts which are potentially exempt, which means if a gift is given by one individual to another individual, or if it is given into a disabled trust, okay, then on such gifts there is no tax levied during the lifetime of the transferor. But if the donor lives, and if the donor lives for 7 years, then there is no IHT. Okay, I give the gift today and I stay alive for the next 7 years. If 7 years pass, then there is no tax. But if the donor dies within 7 years of making the gift, then the gift made is going to be taxed. The PET, that is the potentially exempt transfer, it becomes chargeable on the death of the individual. ठीक है. Then we have the chargeable lifetime transfer. Chargeable lifetime transfers are gifts which are not exempt and which are not covered by the PET or the CLT. Okay, so gifts which are not exempt, gifts which are not covered by the PET clause or by the exempt clause, all of those gifts are basically considered to be uh, exempt. They are considered to be chargeable lifetime transfers. Now, the most common example that you will come across is giving gifts to a trust. So if you have given a gift into a trust, then that gift is usually considered under the CLT category. Okay. Now, during lifetime, IHT will be payable. If the donor lives for another 7 years, then no further IHT. If the donor dies within 7 years, then possibly there is extra IHT. Okay. Now, how to calculate lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts? Okay. First of all, you should calculate the transfer of value. Transfer of value is calculated as value of the estate before the transfer. You compare that with the value of the estate after the transfer. That is your transfer of value. From that, you first of all subtract the specific exemptions, if any, which means if the, say for example, if it is a marriage, if it is a gift on the occasion of marriage, or if it is a gift like 10,000 rupee, 10,000 pounds gift has been given by your father, 5,000 from a parent is exempt under this clause, so subtract that particular amount and calculate the chargeable amount of each CLT and PAT separately. So value, calculate the transfer of value, subtract the specific exemptions and reliefs, and you will get the chargeable amount. Okay, now what you have to do is from that you have to subtract the nil rate band and you have to calculate the tax. Now it will depend upon how much tax you pay will depend upon who is actually making the tax payment. Is it the donor or is it the trustee in some cases? Okay, so let's see how all of this is tackled in through this one question. Okay. Charlotte makes a gift into a trust on 13th of June 2024 of 3,66,000. She has made no previous lifetime gifts. Calculate the amount of lifetime IHT due on the gift into the trust and state the gross chargeable amount of the gift to carry forward for future computations. Now, what is the total transfer of value? The total transfer of value is 3,66,000. Any gift given into a discretionary trust is always a CLT. The only gift which can become the only trust gift which can become a PET is if it is given into a disabled trust. This is not a disabled trust. So transfer of value is 3,66,000 from that, and she has made no previous lifetime gifts. So you subtract 3,000 as annual exemption for current year, then you subtract 3,000 as annual exemption for previous year. The number that you get is your chargeable value. Okay. From that, you subtract the nil rate band. This person had not paid any tax in the previous. So this person had not made any other previous lifetime gift. So pura ka pura NRB, nil rate band of 3,25,000 is unused. Less nil rate band 325, you are left with a taxable amount of 35,000. Inheritance tax at the rate of 20%. Since trustees are paying 35,000 into 20% is 7,000. Okay. If trustees are paying, then the amount, the tax rate is 20%. If the donor is paying, the tax rate is 25%. ठीक है. After that, you get the gross chargeable value. What is gross chargeable value? Gross chargeable value is always chargeable amount plus IHT paid by donor. IHT paid by the trustee will not be considered. Now, in the same situation, if the IHT were to be paid by the donor, then taxable amount is 35,000. On that, you have to pay IHT at the rate of 25%, which makes it 8750. And in this case, the GCV will be 35, so 3,60,000, which is chargeable amount plus IHT paid by the donor, which is 8750. So in this case, it depends upon who has paid the inheritance tax. Okay. If the donor has paid the inheritance tax, then the rate is 25%. If the trustees are going to pay the inheritance tax, the rate is 20%. Okay. This is how inheritance tax is calculated. A couple of points that you need to keep in mind. Chargeable amount is transfer of value minus annual exemption minus any other exemption. Taxable amount is chargeable amount minus NRB. Gross chargeable value is chargeable amount plus the inheritance tax paid by the donor. Okay, now what you need to remember is the 7-year cumulation period, which is the 7-year number is very important for all your IHT calculations. Okay, so NRB available against any CLT. Please write this formula and remember it very, very clearly, because this is not given anywhere else in such clear terms. And if you follow this, you will never get a question on IHT wrong. I'm only talking about lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts. Okay, please keep that in mind. I'm only talking about lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts. How do you calculate the NRB available against a CLT? 325 minus gross chargeable value of all CLTs made during 7 years preceding the date of this CLT. At the CLT whose IHT liability you are trying to calculate, 3,25,000 minus GCV of all CLTs that were made in the 7 years preceding the date of this CLT. Ye calculate karo, your NRB calculation can never go wrong. Let's look at a simple situation where we are talking about 4 gifts. During his lifetime, Alan had made the following gifts. Abhi, I'm not writing. I will just discuss the solution. I'm not writing it down. Okay. Alan made the following gifts. 30th June 2014, 183 to a discretionary trust. 30th June 2020, 150 to his daughter. 31st of June 2021 to a discretionary trust. 31st December 2024, 2,56,000 to a discretionary trust. Look at the first one, the transfer made on 30th June 2004. The tax year is 2014-15. What is the transfer of value? Transfer of value is 183. Amount is given to a discretionary trust, which makes it a chargeable lifetime transfer or CLT. Okay. Subtract the annual exemption of 3,000, you are left with 1,77,000. Before this date, there have been no other lifetime gifts. So 1,77,000 is the uh, chargeable amount. You have the NRB of 3,25,000. So out of 325, you subtract 177 here. You don't pay any tax, and the gross chargeable value is chargeable amount plus tax paid by donor. Nothing was paid by the donor. So GCV is 1,77,000. Okay. Now go to the second one. Second one is the daughter. Gift given by one individual to another is a potentially exempt transfer. So no tax on this, but the year of transfer is 2021. Now, if the year of transfer is 2021, then in that particular year, again, you will have two. So you will subtract the annual exemption for 2021. You will also subtract the brought forward annual exemption for 1920. So transfer of value will be 150 minus 3,000 minus 3,000. That is 1,44,000 will be the transfer of value. But no tax is going to be levied on this. What will be the GCV of this transfer? GCV of this transfer will be chargeable amount plus IHT paid by donor. यहाँ पे no IHT is paid. Gross chargeable amount is 1,44,000. Follow the same procedure. Follow this particular table. गिफ्ट 3 कब दिया था? गिफ्ट 3 दिया था 30th June 2021. Think about the tax year of transfer 21-22. 21-22 का transfer of value कितना है? 191. This is a CLT because amount was gifted into a discretionary trust. उसमें से 3,000 कम करो, you will arrive at 188. और Can you subtract? See, current year is 21-22, which means the preceding year is 2021. But 2021 का AE was already used here. So यहाँ पे separately you don't get any AE brought forward in gift 3. यहाँ पे 0 हो जाएगा. Transfer of value, gross chargeable amount, sorry, chargeable amount is 188. Now the question comes, how much NRB should I deduct? How do you calculate the NRB available on each CLT? 325 minus GCV of all CLTs made in the preceding 7 years. This is not a CLT, forget it. This is a CLT. Was it made in the preceding 7 years? Yes. 30th June 21 say when you go back 7 years, you land on 30th June 14. It was made during the preceding 7 years. So what will be the NRB available? 325 minus 177, which is 1,48,000. यहाँ पे 148 माइनस किया, you are left with taxable amount of 40. Who paid the tax? The trustees of the first two trusts paid the tax. So here trustees paid, tax will be at the rate of 20%. GCV is how much? GCV is chargeable amount plus tax paid by donor. So 188 हो जाएगा. ठीक है. Now let's talk about situation 4, which is gift 4 given 256 given to a discretionary trust in December 2024. अब December 2024 में दिया है to a discretionary trust. Amount given to a discretionary trust is a CLT. अब 256 में से annual exemption minus करो 3000. 256 minus 3000, 2,53,000. What is the preceding tax year? Preceding tax year is 22-23. उसमें there was no transfer, so उसका brought forward AE subtract 3000. 256 minus 3, you are left with 250. Now, from this 250, which is your chargeable amount, you are supposed to subtract the NRB. How is NRB on each CLT calculated? It is 325 minus GCV of all CLTs made in the 7 years preceding the date of transfer. 31st of December 24 से go back 7 years. This CLT will be considered. This PLT is not PAT is not considered. ये तो बहुत पुराना हो गया. तो 325 माइनस इसका GCV माइनस करो. इसका GCV कितना है? 1,88,000. So 325 minus 188, you are left with a nil rate band of 137. इसको subtract करो, you get taxable amount of 1,13,000. On this 1,13,000, tax paid by the donor is 25%. 1,13,000 into 25% is 28,250. इसका GCV आएगा chargeable amount plus IHT paid by the donor, which is 2,78,250. Now, if I want to quickly recap in my head ki how exactly should I calculate the lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts, the calculation should be very simple. Okay, step one, what is the transfer? Check करो whether it is a CLT or whether it is a PAT. वो identify कर लिया. Then spend time in understanding whether एक तो CLT PAT कर लिया, understand what is the tax year of transfer, write it down very clearly, write transfer of value, see if you can subtract any annual exemptions. The amount left after that is your chargeable amount. From that you have to subtract the NRB. NRB on each CLT is 325, 325 minus GCV of all CLTs made during 7 years preceding the date of this CLT. उससे आपको आपका NRB entitlement पता चलेगा. Once you get to know of your NRB entitlement, subtract that, you will be left with a certain amount. If the tax is paid by the trustee, calculate tax at the rate of 20%. If the tax is paid by the donor, calculate tax at the rate of 25%. And at the end, make sure that you calculate a separate value known as the gross chargeable value, which is chargeable amount plus inheritance tax paid by the donor. ये इतना कैलकुलेशन करो. लाइफ टाइम IHT ऑन लाइफ टाइम गिफ्ट्स इज अ वेरी सिंपल कैलकुलेशन. नाउ ये एक स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट हो गया आपका फॉर IHT कैलकुलेशंस. द नेक्स्ट स्टेप इन योर IHT जर्नी इज लाइफ टाइम ट्रांसफर्स. तो डिस्कस कर लिया. अभी वी आर डिस्कसिंग डेथ. सो एन इंडिविजुअल हैज डाइड. व्हाट इज द डेथ IHT ऑन लाइफ टाइम गिफ्ट्स? दैट इज द क्वेश्चन. ठीक है. Death IHT on lifetime gifts. How is that calculated? In this case, you will first of all the calculation that you have already done now, what calculation am I talking about? Before you do the death IHT calculation on lifetime gifts, you should do the lifetime IHT calculation on lifetime gifts. For each of these transfers, you would have calculated a GCV. Take that GCV, that is the starting point of your calculations. Okay. Now note down the date of death and note down the date of transfer. I'll see these steps are given, but I want you to thoda sa visualize each thing properly. Write down the date of death, write down the date of transfer. ठीक है. अब from the date of death go back 7 years. Okay, from the date of death go back 7 years. If there was any PET that occurred in these 7 years, that PET is going to become chargeable on death. If there was any CLT that took place in these 7 years, then that CLT पे आपको you might have to pay additional tax on that CLT. Fair enough. Now identify last 7 years में जाओ, see if there was any CLT that happened in the last 7 years. For any CLT made in those 7 years, उसका GCV लिखो. Check whether any PET happened in the 7 years, in the 7 preceding years. वो PET देखो. Check if that PET has become chargeable on death. ठीक है. If PET has become chargeable on death, take the GCV of this PET. Now the NRB available to you will be 3,25,000 minus the amount of step 5 minus the amount of step 7. What do I mean by step 5 and step 7? Please pay attention. ठीक है. अब NRB available is 325 minus GCV of all CLTs that took place in the 7 years preceding death and minus GCV of all PLTs that happened in the 7 years preceding the death which became chargeable on the date of death. ऐसे सारे PETs का GCV आप निकालो and then you will get the NRB available. Now NRB available on each gift on death is GCV 3,25,000 minus GCV of all chargeable transfers in 7 years preceding the date of the gift. So CLTs तो automatically आ जाएंगे. PET which ones will be included? Only those PETs will be included which became chargeable on the death of the individual. Okay. This is how the NRB is calculated. On the death of an individual, an IHT charge would arise in relation to lifetime gifts within 7 years of the date of death. अगर आपने already कुछ amount pay कर दिया है on the CLT, then that amount will get adjusted. We'll see how that amount gets adjusted. The NRB calculation is slightly different. That NRB calculation has to be done for each gift. Okay. Now, you will have to see whether there is any unused NRB on the death of the spouse. That unused NRB ka proportion is also transferred to the surviving spouse. For example, there is Satyamed and there is wife. ठीक है. Wife died in 2012. At that time, NRB available was 3 lakh. NRB used by wife was 1,40,000. So NRB unused is 1,60,000. ठीक है. Calculate percentage of unused NRB, which is 1,60,000 upon 30,000. Sorry, 3 lakh. कितना आएगा बताइए?
So 53%, 53.3.
53.3%. ठीक है. So now when Satyamedh is dying, उसके टाइम पे NRB था 3,25,000. ठीक है. वाइफ का अनयूज्ड अमाउंट इज 160, बट 160 इज नॉट ट्रांसफर्ड. 53.3% is transferred to me. So the NRB, unused NRB of wife that I can claim is 3,25,000 into the percentage unused by wife at the time of her death. Now, this calculation, this proportionate calculation, may make sure that you calculate the percentage properly. Tell me, is there a need to round up the percentage of unused NRB? ऐसा कुछ requirement है? कहाँ पे है ये ऐसा रिक्वायरमेंट दैट यू हैव टू राउंड अप द परसेंटेज ऑफ अनयूज्ड? वो जो when we sit down to calculate proportion of IHT with respect to exempt goods and services, वहां पे भी राउंड अप, याद आया? यहाँ पे there is no specific provision with respect to rounding up. We'll do a question on this, don't worry. Unused NRB of the spouse is transferred here, है ना कि नहीं? कि डेथ स्टेट में होता है, कहाँ पे होता है? Where does that
Death
get?
estate,
डेथ स्टेट यहाँ पे होगा.
not
Death
in the lifetime
IHT
plan.
on lifetime gifts, will it be done here? Tell me.
No, so
It will
only
not
death
be
estate.
done here. This calculation is done in death estate working, not in death IHT on lifetime gifts. ठीक है. But in case of death IHT on lifetime gifts, you calculate something that is known as the taper relief, where IHT is chargeable on any lifetime transfer due to death. The amount of IHT payable on death will be reduced by the taper relief, where more than 3 years have elapsed since the date of the gift by a percentage reduction according to the length of time between the date of the gift and the date of donor's death. If the date of the previous gift and the date of donor's death is more than 3 but less than 4, percentage reduction is 20%. If it is more than 4 but less than 5, percentage reduction is 40%. So, and this table is, by the way, given to you in the paper. Check how many years before death was the gift given. If the gift was given more than 3 years before the date of death but less than 4 years, IHT will be reduced by 20%. And this table is given to you in the exam. Just remember, the transfer of unused band is a calculation that you do in death estate, not in death IHT on lifetime gifts. It is very important for you to know what calculation goes where. अगर आपने वो calculation में गलती कर दिया, तो naturally then everything goes for a toss, which is why these revision sessions we are doing. ठीक है, एक बार देखो तो. Gino died on 30th June. He made the following lifetime gifts. 31st of July 2014, 80,000 gift to his son. 30th November 2019, 1,10,000 gift to his daughter. 30th April, 2,35,000 to his son. Calculate the IHT arising as a result of Gino's death. State who will pay the tax and the due date of payment. ठीक है? Look at gift 1, gift 2, and gift 3. First of all, this is a calculation on lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts. First of all, when you have to calculate the death IHT payable on
Sir,
lifetime gifts, huh?
your screen is not visible, sir. If I'm not wrong, anyone else can confirm.
Yes, sir.
Okay, ये देख लो. I think I was discussing the provision, so I didn't go here. Up, Gino died on 30th June and he made the following lifetime gifts. You have to calculate the death IHT on lifetime gifts. When you calculate the death IHT on lifetime gifts, you should first of all do the lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts wala calculation, and then you should do the death IHT on lifetime gifts wala working. ठीक है, एक बार ये देखो. Look at the data given in the question, and then we'll tackle the individual gifts one by one. ठीक है. ठीक है, I'll give you a minute to go through the lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts wala calculation. I'll be back in a moment, and then we'll see the death IHT on lifetime gifts wala calculation. ठीक है, आप पहले ये वाला देख लो, the one on your screen. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, now with respect to these gifts, we have to see, is there any death IHT implication? Okay, Gino died on 30th of June 2023. Go back 7 years from 30th of June 2023. You land on 30th of June 2016. Okay, you will land on 30th of June 2016. Any transfers before 30th of June 2016, forget those. So this is out. There is no death IHT on this lifetime gift. But this PET made to the daughter will now become chargeable. What was the GCV of this PET? GCV was 1,04,000. So 1,04,000 minus, now you have to subtract NRB. What is the NRB? How do you calculate NRB on the death estate? The NRB on the death estate का calculation जो है, that's given by a formula, and we just now saw the formula. What is the formula? The formula very clearly says that you should take 325 minus GCV of all those amounts which became chargeable on death. GCV of all those transfers that became chargeable on death. 325 minus what all became chargeable on death? क्या लिखा था यहाँ पे? NRB available is 325 minus step 5 for any CLT made down during the period, GCV of that CLT, and if a PET has become chargeable on death, then the GCV of such PET. अब इधर देखो, calculate for gift 2 and gift 3. ठीक है, अब आपको क्या करना है to calculate the NRB? Step 1, note down the date of death. Step 2, note down the date of transfer. Step 3, note down the date 7 years prior to the date of transfer. ठीक है, 30th June 2019, 30th November 2019 is the date of transfer. उसके पीछे 7 साल जाओ, you will arrive at 30th of November 2022. ठीक है, now between the dates in step 2 and step 3, check if there was any CLT or PET. There was a PET. Yes, gift 1 was a PET. For any CLT made in this period, write down the GCV. There is no CLT. For any PET made during this period, check if the check whether the PET has become chargeable on death. ये जो there is no other PET that has become chargeable on. See, gift 1 was a potentially exempt transfer. And did this become chargeable on the death of the individual? No. This gift did not become chargeable on the death of the individual. आपको क्या लेना है? What do you have to take? Any PET made during this period, check if the PET has become chargeable on death. The answer is no. So, if PET has become chargeable on death, take the GCV of such PET. Nothing. So NRB available is 325 minus step 5 minus step 7. This calculation you have to do for each gift. Note down the date of death, note down the date of transfer. ठीक है, अब from the date of transfer go back 7 years from the date of transfer of each gift. ये calculation जो है ये हर एक gift के लिए अलग से होगा. Write down the date of transfer. Go back 7 years from the date of transfer. When you go back 7 years from the date of transfer, write down जो भी आपका date आ रहा है. ठीक है, that is 30th November 2012. अब ये जो 7 years का period है, check if there was any CLT in the 7-year period, which check if there was any CLT. नहीं है. Is there a PET in the 7-year period? Yes, there is a PET. Did that PET become chargeable on death? The answer is no. That PET did not become chargeable on death. So, how much is the NRB available? NRB available is 325 minus step 5 minus step 7, which is 3,25,000 here because you had nothing to subtract. Look at gift 3. Date of transfer 30th April 20. 7 साल पीछे जाओ, कहां पे पहुंचेंगे? You will reach 30th April 2013. Now, between these two dates, are there any CLT PET? There is gift 1 which was a PET. There is gift 2 which was a PET. For any CLT made in this period, write down the GCV. No, there is no CLT made during this period. ठीक है, अब any PET made during this period, check if the PLT has become chargeable on death. Gift 1 was a PET which did not become chargeable on death. Gift 2 was a PET which became chargeable on death. ठीक है, उस PET का GCV निकालो which is 1,04,000. ऑलरेडी आपने करके रखा है. Gross chargeable value is 1,04,000. So your NRB available will be 325 minus step 5 minus step 7 which is 2,21,000. अब ऊपर आओ, 232 में से 221 सब्ट्रैक्ट किया, बचा 11,000. IHT at the rate of 40% हो गया 4,400 लेस टेपर रिलीफ 20% of that. Why taper relief 20%? Because this transfer happened 3 years, more than 3 years before, but not more than 4 years. More than three, but less than four वाले period में ये particular transfer हुआ, which is why the taper relief is 20%. Now, the most important thing the most important calculation when it comes to death IHT on lifetime gifts is the NRB calculation. And how exactly do you propose to perform this NRB calculation? आपको क्या करना है? Write down the date of death and write down the date of transfer. Check karo whether that date of transfer is falling in the 7 years before the date of death. If the answer to that part is ki no, it doesn't fall in that period, to chhod do. If it falls in that period, pick up that gift. Go back 7 years from the date of transfer. ठीक है, डेट ऑफ ट्रांसफर से 7 साल पीछे जाओ. In this 7 year period, आपको क्या चेक करना है? In this 7 year period, you have to check whether there were any CLTs. ठीक है, अगर कोई CLT होगा, write down the GCV. In this 7 year period, also check if there was any potentially exempt transfer which became chargeable on the death. If that PAT did not become chargeable on death, तो उसको छोड़ दो. If that PAT became chargeable on death, तो उसका GCV निकालो. 325 में से दोनों GCV माइनस करो, यू विल गेट NRB ऑन डेथ ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल. ठीक है, वंस यू हैव NRB ऑन द डेथ ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल, सब्ट्रैक्ट करो फ्रॉम द ग्रॉस चार्जेबल वैल्यू, अप्लाई द इनहेरिटेंस टैक्स रेट ऑफ 40%. उसमें से यू हैव टू सब्ट्रैक्ट द टेपर रिलीफ एंड यू विल गेट योर आंसर. ठीक है, अब question 7, I want you to do this on your own, not right now, later as a revision. It will help you to understand the death IHT implications on lifetime gifts. Yes, Harsh.
So if suppose there was a CLT during the lifetime in the previous question, like if there was another gift with a CLT, then when doing the NRB calculation on death, we will subtract the GCVs from 325 or from the NRB available after giving
The
to the
formula is
CLT.
always fixed, 325 minus GCV of all CLTs and GCV of all PATs which became chargeable on death. उतना ही है, उसमें अपने मन से मॉडिफिकेशन मत करना फॉर्मूला में.
Okay, so it's fixed formula even if there was NRB charged, like NRB पहले भी use up हो चुका है तो भी कोई दिक्कत नहीं.
Yes.
Okay.
See, one important thing. Now I can see that Harsh is applying his mind. Harsh is trying to think logically कि नहीं इतना ही होना चाहिए, नहीं उतना ही होना चाहिए. हमको क्या लगता है कितना होना चाहिए, that is irrelevant. What matters in the exam is what did HMRC say. अगर आपके सामने specific rule has been given, 325 minus GCV of all CLTs made in the 7 years preceding the date of gift minus GCV of all PETs made in the 7 years preceding the date of gift which became chargeable on death. तो वहां पे ये जो वर्ड्स मैं बार बार बोल रहा हूँ ना, these words are there with a reason. ये दिमाग लगाने वाला पेपर नहीं है. दिमाग लगाने वाला पेपर AFM हो सकता है, दिमाग लगाने वाला पेपर SBR हो सकता है. ये पेपर, डोंट ट्राई टू अप्लाई योर माइंड इवन 0.1%. डोंट अप्लाई योर माइंड एट ऑल. ठीक है, जो रूल मैंने लिख के दिया है वही रूल वैसे का वैसा वर्ड फॉर वर्ड आपको फॉलो करना है. आई एम रिपीटिंग, वॉट एवर रूल हैज बीन गिवन टू यू, वो रूल वैसे का वैसा. इट डजेंट मैटर whether that seems fair to you, whether that seems unfair to you, whether that seems logical or not. आपने ATX के पेपर में अपना दिमाग लगाया, आई कैन गारंटी यू आप फेल हो जाओगे. ये दिमाग लगाने वाला पेपर नहीं है, ये रटने वाला पेपर है. एनीबडी हु फॉलोज द एक्सेल शीट एंड सी, देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ नोटेशन दैट आई डू हियर एंड देयर, राइट. मैं बहुत जगह कुछ कुछ लिखता हूं ना. ये जो अभी 7 स्टेप्स है, for each gift that has become chargeable on death मैंने लिखा है ना. note down the date of death, note down the date of transfer, note down the date 7 years prior to the date of transfer. फिर स्पेसिफिकली बोला है स्टेप 2 स्टेप 3 के जो डेट्स है उसमें चेक करो whether there is any CLT और PAT. देन मैंने क्या वर्ड लिखा है यहाँ पे, नो वर्ड इज रिटर्न विथ अ टाइम पास इंटेंशन. ना, ये SBL नहीं है कि आप कुछ भी टाइम पास करोगे. यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है, any CLT made during this period, note down the GCV. Any PET made during the period, check if the PET has become chargeable on death. If PET has become chargeable on death, take the GCV of such PET. So be very, very careful in terms of how you are approaching the questions. आपने अपना दिमाग लगाया, वो question wrong. And once a question is wrong, then there is no way on the face of this earth that you can ever get it back. Okay? There are couple of questions more that we did during the class. As a practice, you can do these questions. Remember one thing, if you practice this also, you are practicing the provision. And if you are practicing the provision, then I don't see any issue in terms of solving the questions. Okay, there is a special relief that we calculate in IHT, which is called the fall in value relief. Important to know, when does the fall in value relief apply? Okay, the chargeable amount of a lifetime CLT or PAT is calculated and fixed at the time of the gift. If the gift becomes chargeable on the death of the donor, any increase in value between the date of the gift and the date of donor's death is ignored. Observe here in this question, the GCV was fixed at 2,32,000. Now it might happen that on the date of death, the market value of this particular asset has gone up, but you will not take into consideration the market value. You will stick with this GCV that is given to you. Okay, the increase will not be considered. But if the asset decreases in value between the date of the gift and the date of donor's death, relief is available to reduce the chargeable amount of this gift on death. To qualify for this relief, the asset must either still be owned by the donee at the date of donor's death, or it was sold in an arm's length transaction before the donor died. Note that this relief is not available in respect of any property which is expected to fall in value over time. For example, plant and machinery and wasting chattels. So if, see, these are properties whose value is expected to only decrease over time. So idhar nahi lagta hai. Basically for buildings and all of that, na, there you could have a fall in value relief. The relief operates by reducing the chargeable amount by the fall in value calculated from the donee's point of view. The fall in value is the difference between the value of asset at the date of gift and the value of the asset at the date of donor's death or the date of sale if earlier. Whatever is the difference between the value of asset at the date of the gift and the value of asset at the date of the donor's death, the difference between that is considered fall in value relief. It applies to both PET and CLT, only affects the calculation of the IHT on that one gift, has no effect on lifetime IHT already paid. So जब आप death IHT on lifetime gifts निकालते हो, at that time this particular relief applies, otherwise this relief is not applicable. Let's look at a simple question to understand how the fall in value relief works. Tim died on 30th June 2023. On 30th of April 2020, Tim had made a gift of 1 lakh shares, a 1% holding in ABC PLC, a quoted company, into a discretionary trust. Tim paid the IHT arising on the gift. Tim had made no other lifetime gifts. ठीक है? If Tim made a gift into a discretionary trust, then that is a CLT. ठीक है, CLT जिसमें ट्रांसफर ऑफ वैल्यू है 3.65 per share. There are 1 lakh such shares, so 1 lakh into 3.65, your transfer of value is 3,65,000. ठीक है, take that 3,65,000, उसमें से आप subtract करो annual exemption of 2 years, you will get you will get chargeable value of 3,59,000. उसमें से subtract करो nil rate band of 325, you will arrive at the taxable amount of 34. Now this tax was paid by whom? Calculate the IHT liability, and Tim paid the tax. Tim is who? Tim is the donor. Tim is the donor. So when the donor pays IHT, inheritance tax is calculated at the rate of 25%. 25% of what? 25% of the taxable amount. 34,000 का 25% निकाला, हो गया 8,500. What is the gross chargeable value? 367,500. ठीक है. Now this question is focused on fall in value relief. Fall in value relief is applicable only in cases where you are calculating death IHT on lifetime gifts. And how is it calculated? The value of the estate on the date, value of the asset on the date of gift versus value of asset at the date of donor's death. Donor death पे कितना है value? 3 lakh 35,000. Why 3 lakh 35? On this date, if you see, the price per share is 3.35. On the date of gift, it was 3.65. So fall in value is 30,000. Fall in value relief is 30,000. Subtract करो 367 में से 30,000, you have 3,37,000. You have to calculate NRB on death. How is NRB on death calculated? 325 minus, check it from the date of this gift. What is the date of this gift? 30th April 20. उसके पीछे 7 साल जाने का, कहाँ पे आएंगे? 30th April 13. Between these two dates, was there a CLT or was there a potentially exempt transfer? टिम हैज मेड नो अदर लाइफ टाइम गिफ्ट्स, मतलब ना सीएलटी था ना पीएटी था, विच मींस जीसीबी यू विल सब्ट्रैक्ट, कुछ भी नहीं सब्ट्रैक्ट कर पाएंगे. यू विल बी लेफ्ट विथ 3,25,000. द टैक्सेबल अमाउंट इज 12,500. IHT is at the rate of 40% on this, which is 5,000. You subtract taper relief. देखो ये क्वेश्चन में बहुत सारे अलग अलग प्रोविजंस आर कमिंग इन टुगेदर. You subtract taper relief, then you subtract IHT paid during lifetime. This is also subtracted when you calculate death IHT on lifetime gifts. Calculate IHT paid during lifetime, it can make your IHT zero. But a death IHT का calculation में, when you subtract the lifetime IHT paid, it can never create a refund or repayment of tax. ठीक है? Just give me one moment, guys. I need to fix something in my internet connection. एक second दो मुझे. Okay. So, everyone, was this a decent enough revision of a concept that we have already studied? Priya, Harsh,
Yes, sir.
याद आ
Yes,
रहा है?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Because see, I understand with ATX being so vast ना, maybe आपको यार 12th और 13th of July को किया हुआ काम आपको, it's quite possible that you end up forgetting, which is why I thought कि यार a revision is desired, a revision is necessary. ठीक है, आगे क्या करेंगे? आगे हम करेंगे डेथ एस्टेट का IHT. IHT on death estate. The procedure to calculate IHT on death estate is as follows. Deal with the IHT on lifetime gifts within 7 years of the death estate. Within 7 years of the date of death, first, before dealing with the estate computation, calculate the gross chargeable estate value, calculate the amount of RNRB, calculate the amount of NRB, calculate the tax on excess at 40% or 36%, deduct QSR and DTR, and then you have the IHT on death estate. अब डेथ एस्टेट में ना देयर इज अ स्पेशल कैलकुलेशन दैट यू डू, which is the residence nil rate band or the RNRB. RNRB is only available in a death estate working. RNRB is not available when you are calculating lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts or when you are calculating death IHT on lifetime gifts. So when you are calculating lifetime IHT on, वो अप्लाई ही नहीं होता है. डेथ एस्टेट में कैसे अप्लाई होगा आपका RNRB? इफ एन इंडिविजुअल गिव्स द असेट टू हिज lineal descendant. Lineal descendant मतलब son, daughter या grandchild, or any one of these. If he gives a residential house to them as a part of the disbursal of his death estate, then 1,75,000 का आपको मिलता है residence nil rate band. ठीक है, ये residence nil rate band is available only when a residential property is being transferred by an individual to his son or daughter or to his grandchildren. ठीक है। यहाँ पे एनआरबी ऑन डेथ एस्टेट इफ यू हैव टू कैलकुलेट, द फॉर्मूला इज 325 माइनस जीसीबी ऑफ ऑल सीएलटीज एंड पीएटीज मेड इन द 7 years प्रायर टू द डेट ऑफ डेथ। ठीक है, यहाँ पे ऑल सीएटीज एंड पीएटीज बोला है मेड 7 years प्रायर टू द डेट ऑफ डेथ। And what is the due date of payment of IHT on death? IHT as a result of death is due on the earlier of 6 months after the end of the month of death or on the delivery of the account to HMRC, whichever is earlier. ठीक है। Note that who pays the tax on estate value depends on the composition of the estate. वो हम बाद में देखेंगे who pays tax। ठीक है। अब Thomas died on 23rd of April 23, leaving a gross chargeable estate value of 627,560, which was bequeathed to his girlfriend. Thomas had made the following lifetime gifts. On 1st of June 2014, 1,80,000 to a discretionary trust. On 16th of March 2019, 2,28,000 to his cousin. ठीक है। अब you have to calculate the IHT liability arising on Thomas's estate and state the due date of payment। सबसे पहले करो लाइफ टाइम IHT on लाइफ टाइम गिफ्ट्स वाला कैलकुलेशन। उसमें आपको मिलेगा no IHT paid here and gross chargeable estate value। Then the person died, so now do death IHT on lifetime gifts वाला working। ठीक है, वो कर लिया आपने। IHT payable was 17040 in case of gift 2। Now, how to calculate NRB on death? वो आपने मतलब we know the procedure on how to calculate NRB on death. But IHT on death estate कैसे निकलता है? IHT on death estate is gross chargeable estate value, which is 627,560 minus NRB. NRB is 325 minus what? Minus GCV of all CLTs and PATs made in the 7 years prior to death। ठीक है। What is the date of death? Date of death is 23rd of April 23। इसके पीछे 7 साल जाओ, you will arrive at 23rd of April 16। 23rd of April 16 versus 23rd of April 2023. In these dates, see if there was a disposal that happened. So if there was a gift that was made, there was a gift to his cousin of 2,28,000 pounds। उसका GCV निकालो, 2,28,000 minus 3 minus 3, 222 will be the amount of GCV। 325 में से 222 minus करो, you will get NRB on death estate of 1,03,000। वो माइनस किया, आपको कितना मिला? आपको टैक्सेबल वैल्यू मिला 524,560। ठीक है। सो एनआरबी ऑन डेथ एस्टेट वाला कैलकुलेशन इज रिलेटिवली कम स्टेप वाला कैलकुलेशन है, बट व्हेन यू आर कैलकुलेटिंग एनआरबी इन केस ऑफ डेथ आईएचटी ऑन लाइफ टाइम गिफ्ट्स, वहां पे हर गिफ्ट के पीछे 7 years you have to go, so that calculation requires a little more focus। And whenever you are calculating IHT on death estate, you should first calculate lifetime IHT on lifetime gifts, then you should calculate death IHT on lifetime gifts। उसके बाद जाकर ही you will be able to calculate the IHT on death estate, because this calculation requires GCV of all CLTs and PATs made in the 7 years preceding the date of death। ठीक है। As I told you, in the death estate, the if an individual transfers a main residence to his direct descendants, and if the date of death is on or after 6th of April 17, then while calculating the chargeable estate value, you subtract 1,75,000 as residence nil rate band। अब ये residence nil rate band is only applicable if it is transferred to a lineal descendant on the occasion of death, otherwise you will not get it। And buy to let properties are not eligible for RNRB। RNRB is the lower of 1,75,000 and value net of repayment mortgages of the residential property। So RNRB is the lower of 175, which is the official amount, or value net of the repayment mortgages। So if you have a property worth 2 lakh and you have a loan outstanding of 1,60,000, then the amount of RNRB will be not 175, it will be 2 lakh minus 1,40,000, जो भी amount आएगा, that will be the amount of RNRB that you will get. ठीक है. अब along with this RNRB का discussion is not complete. RNRB में there is tapered withdrawal of RNRB and all of that, and then transfer of unused NRB RNRB. So let's take a quick break, 5-6 minutes का. Let's come back and then we'll discuss those aspects. Okay, come back in 5-6 minutes. Chalo guys, come back. Okay, now this RNRB, residence nil rate band, that will have to be reduced or that will have to be withdrawn from the death estate with a net value before deducting APR, BPR and exemption exceeding 2 million. So if the value of the death estate is more than 2 million, then the RNRB will have to be reduced. What do I mean by RNRB will have to be reduced? जो 1,75,000 का एलिजिबिलिटी है आपका फॉर रेसिडेंस निल रेट बैंड, दैट विल हैव टू बी रिड्यूस्ड एट द रेट ऑफ £1 for every £2 exceeding the threshold. The RNRB will therefore be reduced to nil when the net estate is £23,50,000. ठीक है. So on 1st of May, Ilgar died, leaving the following assets and liabilities. House net of repayment mortgage 6 lakh, bank account 7 lakh, quoted shares 750, credit card bills 3,000, value of estate 20 lakh 47,000. Ilgar left the house which they had lived in for many years to their daughter, the shares to their husband, and the residue of their estate to the son. So, what is the estate value before claiming exemption APR BPR? 20 lakh 47,000. When the estate value exceeds 2 million, for every £2 of excess, RNRB is withdrawn by £1. Excess कितना है? 2047 minus 20 lakhs. ठीक है, 2 million. Now, when you do that, कितना आएगा डिफरेंस? 47,000. 47,000 into 0.5. Why 0.5? For every for every £2 excess, RNRB is withdrawn by £1. So the half of that. So कितना आ जाएगा? 23,500 is the tapered withdrawal of RNRB. RNRB available updated value is 1,75,000 minus 23,500, 151,500. ठीक है. And house net of repayment mortgage is 6 lakh. So NRB is the lower of the two. यहाँ पे lower of the two है 151,500. Now when you have to calculate IHT on death estate, take the gross chargeable estate, take the estate value, subtract exempt legacy. What is exempt legacy? Amount left to spouse is exempt legacy. 750 के shares were left to the husband, subtract 750. RNRB कम करो 151,500. NRB कम करो 3,25,000. Taxable amount left is 8,25,000. उस पे 40% tax लगाओ. 3,28,200 is your NRB on the death estate. The reason why I picked up this question is there aren't too many questions on tapered withdrawal of RNRB, और यहाँ पे वो हो रहा है, which is why I have taken this up. Transfer of unused nil rate bands we were supposed to discuss here, but we already discussed that earlier, so I am not discussing it again. Now, how are shares and securities supposed to be valued in IHT? The transfer of value is normally the open market value of the asset gifted. Quoted shares and securities का होगा lower of quarter up method. Lower price plus 1/4 of higher price minus lower price, or average of the highest and lowest recorded bargains. Highest and lowest का average लो या फिर quarter up method use करो. The range of prices quoted is usually the cum dividend value for shares and cum interest value for securities. In the exam, always assume shares and securities are quoted cum dividend and cum interest unless the question states otherwise. आपको, if it is not given, if the amount of dividend is given to you separately, take the वैल्यू ऑफ द शेयर, उसमें ऐड करो नेक्स्ट डिविडेंड पेमेंट. अगर सिक्योरिटी मतलब इफ इट इज नॉट अ शेयर, इफ इट इज अ बॉन्ड और समथिंग, उसमें ऐड करो नेक्स्ट इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट, एंड दैट विल गिव यू द वैल्यू टू बी इंक्लूडेड इन द डेथ एस्टेट. यू आर सपोज टू इंक्लूड द कम इंटरेस्ट कम डिविडेंड वैल्यूज. These valuation rules apply to all quoted shares and securities, including investment trust, open-ended investment companies, gilt-edged securities, VCTs and REITs. REITs हमने property income में देखा था. For unquoted shares and securities, it has to be agreed with HMRC's valuation team. Unit trusts are valued at the lowest bid price. Don't use the quarter up method. ठीक है. अब there is a concept called related property. ठीक है. Related property is related to the donor's property if it is property of a similar kind owned by donor, spouse or civil partner, an exempt body as a result of gift from that person or that person's spouse or civil partner. But अपने को एग्जाम में सिर्फ spouse और civil partner वाला situation is asked. Now, with respect to related property, what is the valuation rule? If you are calculating the value of unquoted shares, if the asset is shares, then the related property valuation should be as follows: A upon A plus B into value of combined assets of a similar kind, where A is number of shares held by the donor, B is number of shares held by the related parties. ठीक है. ऐसे करके आपको मिलेगा value of that particular item held by the donor. If this item is something apart from shares, then same formula, but then A means value of donor's asset and B means value of the related party assets. Now, in this case, this is a classic question on related property. Sarah owns two antique chairs which are a part of a set of six. Her husband owns three and her daughter owns one. Sarah gifts one chair to her son. The value of the chairs on that date are as follows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chairs का value दिया है. Calculate the transfer of value. Transfer of value is value of estate before transfer versus value of estate after transfer. How do you calculate value of estate before transfer? सारा के पास कितना था? She owns two chairs which are a part of a set of six. But when she is owning two chairs as a part of a set of six, उसके पास दो है, उसके husband के पास तीन है. Her two chairs and her husband's three chairs, total they are related property. तो सारा के two chairs का वैल्यू कैसे निकलेगा? वैल्यू ऑफ एस्टेट बिफोर ट्रांसफर कैसे आएगा? Value of two chairs using related property rules. Value of combined total assets of a similar kind. ठीक है. वैल्यू ऑफ कंबाइंड टोटल असेट्स ऑफ सिमिलर काइंड. कंबाइंड टोटल असेट्स ऑफ सिमिलर काइंड मतलब पांच चेयर का वैल्यू. पांच चेयर का वैल्यू कितना है? 60,000. 60,000 इंटू ए अपॉन ए प्लस बी. व्हाट इज ए? ए इज वैल्यू ऑफ डोनर्स असेट, बी इज वैल्यू ऑफ रिलेटेड पार्टी का असेट. डोनर का असेट है दो चेयर विच इज 15,000. रिलेटेड पार्टी हस्बैंड का 25,000. So how will you calculate the value of two chairs? Value of two chairs will be 5 into 15 upon 15 plus 25, 22,500. How will you calculate the value of one share using related property rules? You take the total value of assets of a similar kind. मतलब after the transfer, she gave one asset to her son, right? She gave one chair to her son. अभी उसके पास कितना बचा? एक बचा. हस्बैंड के पास कितना बचा? तीन बचा. सो टोटल असेट्स ऑफ अ सिमिलर काइंड रिलेटेड प्रॉपर्टी कितना है? चार. चार में से एक का वैल्यू निकालना है. वैल्यू ऑफ कंबाइंड टोटल असेट्स ऑफ अ सिमिलर काइंड, चार चेयर का वैल्यू है 40,000. ठीक है. into A upon A plus B. What is A? A is value of property belonging to the donor, which is 5,000. Denominator A plus B. प्रॉपर्टी बिलोंगिंग टू द डोनर का वैल्यू प्लस रिलेटेड प्रॉपर्टी का वैल्यू. हस्बैंड के पास कितना है? 25,000 है. ठीक है. यू अराइव एट दिस नंबर. अब आपको निकालना है वैल्यू ऑफ वन शेयर. ठीक है. वैल्यू ऑफ वन शेयर आप कैसे निकालेंगे? 40 इंटू 5 अपॉन 5 प्लस 25,000 विच इज 6667. ट्रांसफर ऑफ वैल्यू कितना होगा? ट्रांसफर ऑफ वैल्यू विल बी 15,833. रिलेटेड प्रॉपर्टी पे not too many questions have been asked, but this is something different, something unique, which is why I want you to do this properly. ये next question जो है, that next question is related property only, but this is related property for shares. तो थोड़ा सा A upon A plus B में A और B का meaning change हो जाता है. Now, there are two critical reliefs that we have in inheritance tax. One is business property relief, the other one is agricultural property relief. To qualify for BPR, it should be a relevant business property, and it must have been held for the minimum period of ownership. Relevant business property is, there are four items which qualify for BPR. What are those four items? Unincorporated business अगर ट्रांसफर किया तो 100% रिलीफ, अनकोटेड शेयर्स एंड सिक्योरिटीज ट्रांसफर किया तो 100% रिलीफ, कोटेड शेयर्स एंड सिक्योरिटीज ट्रांसफर किया तो 50% बीपीआर, एंड land and building, plant or machinery used by an individual in the in a business or in a company which the donor has control, or in a partnership in which the donor is a partner. If you do that, then there is a 50% relief. ठीक है. In case of quoted shares and securities, relief is available only if the individual has voting control of the company before the transfer. In case of unquoted shares and securities, you have you don't have that control wala condition applicable. Okay. Now, what is the minimum period of ownership to qualify for BPR? You must hold the property for a minimum period of 2 years before the transfer. If the asset was inherited on the death of a spouse or civil partner, then the period held by the spouse should also be considered. Okay. Then, are there any exceptions to the 2-year qualifying rule? There are two key situations where the 2-year qualifying rule is not satisfied, but BPR is still available. One is replacement property, and the other is successive transfers. If successive transfer is, BPR is still available where the relevant business property held was eligible for BPR at the time it was acquired, and it was either acquired as a result of death or is now chargeable as a result of death. Satyamed owned a factory for 1 year and transferred it to his friend. He held the property only for 1 year, ideally does not qualify for BPR. But this factory was a replacement purchase for another factory that he previously held before this one, and he held that one for a period of 2.5 years. Value of factory transferred after 1 year of ownership 4 lakh. Value of old factory which was held for 2.5 years 3,20,000. BPR will be available on 3,20,000, that is lower of the two values. Replacement property में BPR is available where the relevant business property has not been held for 2 years because this property replaced a relevant business property which was previously held, and the individual owned some type of relevant business property for a combined period of ownership of at least 2 out of the last 5 years. BPR is the lower of the two values. So these are some of the points that you have to keep in mind when you are talking about exceptions to the BPR wala calculation. Now, exceptions to the qualifying period wala calculation. Remember, there are four assets which are eligible for BPR. Now, ये BPR जो है, BPR can be withdrawn, और there is a concept of accepted assets. ये वाला जो concept है ना, accepted assets वाला, this concept is applicable in, मतलब यहाँ पे the concept that we'll see, it is applicable in multiple other situations also. Basically, if you don't have a if you're not using that particular property for business purposes, so a lot of the reliefs na in CGT also, they are withdrawn. If you have observed the kind of questions that we did in the last week or the week before that, accepted assets to qualify for BPR, an unincorporated business must be a trading business, and the companies in which the individual has shares must be a trading company. An accepted asset is an asset that has not been used wholly or mainly for business purposes throughout the preceding 2 years and is not likely to be required for future use in the business. How do you restrict the BPR? Transfer of value into value of total assets less value of accepted assets divided by value of total assets. To keep things simple, if a particular asset has not been used for trading business purposes, so with respect to that asset, you do not get any business property relief. Okay. So how do you calculate that? So suppose my total assets are 2 lakh, but out of that, one asset worth 30,000 is not used for trading business purposes. So आपका numerator हो जाएगा 2 lakh minus 30,000, 1,70,000, and the total relief available will be whatever is the amount of relief into 170 upon 200. ऐसे करके ही आपको आपका restricted BPR मिलेगा. Please keep that in mind when we are talking about rollover. Rollover relief में तो सबसे ज्यादा common situation है where the asset is not used for trading purposes. So even in case of जैसे this situation also is applicable in PRR where one particular part of the house is not used for residential purpose, तो PRR to that extent gets reduced. यहाँ पे BPR is getting reduced. Okay. Now withdrawal of BPR on death. Satyamit gifts unquoted shares to his friend. On the date of transfer, this is a PET. PPR should be deducted to arrive at the GCV. ठीक है. Satyamit dies within 7 years of such transfer. The PET becomes chargeable. On the date of death, there will be another IHT calculation for death IHT on lifetime gifts. Now, in this working, BPR will be available only if his friend was holding the unquoted shares on the date of Satyamit's death. Basically, there the conditions relating to BPR should be fulfilled at the time of transfer also, and these should be fulfilled later at the time of death also. If the conditions are not fulfilled at the time of death, तो क्या होगा? BPR will be withdrawn in that case. So the conditions for BPR are considered at the time of gift, and BPR is given at the appropriate rate when calculating the amount of CLT PET. If the gift becomes chargeable on death, BPR must be considered again. दो बार consider करना है, but you have to verify whether the asset is still relevant business property at the date of death and the donee still owns the business property or replacement business property at the date of donor's death or the date of donee's death if the donee predeceased the donor. Basically, the property should still be a relevant business property and the property should be owned by the donor on the date of should be owned by the donee on the date of donor's death. अगर ये नहीं हुआ तो BPR business property relief is withdrawn. Now, similar to business property relief, we have something that is known as the agricultural property relief. ठीक है. अब agricultural property relief APR is given before BPR, by the way. APR किस चीज में मिलता है आपको? APR you get on the agricultural value of agricultural property, right? उसमें अगर business element होगा, development value होगा, तो उस पे you don't get APR. APR is always given before BPR. Keep that in mind. Now, the withdrawal of APR is also in the same way as withdrawal of BPR. Basically, what we are trying to say is कि if see the conditions relating to APR which are similar to these conditions should be fulfilled on two dates, which are the two dates on the date of death also and then on the date of death first, sorry, on the date of gift and later on the date of death. Agar on the date of death the conditions are not fulfilled, the APR is withdrawn. APR, by the way, is available 100% if you are doing the farming, but if you have a farm and you have given the farm on rent to someone else and somebody else is doing the farming, तो tenanted farm पे APR is only at the rate of 50%. पूरा का पूरा APR वहां पे नहीं मिलता है, so you have to be a little careful in that calculation. To qualify for APR, the agricultural property must have been held for a minimum period of 2 years if the property is farmed by the owner. If the property is farmed by the tenant, then it should be held for a minimum period of 7 years. Okay. And what is relevant agricultural property? एक बार देख लो. Have a look at this. ठीक है. Are you all with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, chalo.
Yes.
Ab APR is given before BPR. How do we remember that? ABCD में A पहले आता है ना, तो APR is given before BPR. Now, by the way, APR is only given for agricultural value of the property, हाँ, not for the developmental value. उसके लिए APR नहीं मिलता है. If you're talking about shares in a farming company, APR is available, excuse me, in respect of shares in a farming company, provided the individual has control of the company, the minimum period of ownership condition is satisfied. Note that to determine control, related property holdings must be considered. APR is only given against the agricultural value that can be attributed to shares. मतलब बिजनेस वैल्यू या डेवलपमेंट वैल्यू पे आपको एपीआर नहीं मिलेगा. नाउ एपीआर बीपीआर, APR से ज्यादा I have seen many more questions testing you on the business property relief. ठीक है. अब another point that you need to keep in mind whenever you are doing the IHT calculation is that if a business entity has not a business entity, sorry, if an individual has transferred certain items and he has made different donations to charities, some gifts to his son, some gift to someone else, discretionary trust, blah blah blah, a reduced death of 36% applies when more than 10% of the baseline amount is left to a qualifying charity. Okay, now what is this baseline amount? Baseline amount is taxable estate plus RNRB plus charitable legacies. Okay, baseline amount is taxable estate plus RNRB plus charitable legacies. आप क्या करो? If the amount of donations to a charity is 10% or more of this amount, then the IHT rate applicable is not 40. IHT rate applicable is 36%. Now, payment of IHT pay, there have been times, when they have asked questions on payment of IHT, mostly on payment by installment. IHT on land and building, a business or an interest in a business and certain shares can be paid in 10 equal annual installments starting on the normal due date for payment. The asset must still be owned by the donee, and if it is sold, the whole of the outstanding installments become payable immediately. ठीक है. अब सब पे इंस्टॉलमेंट स्कीम नहीं है. द इंस्टॉलमेंट स्कीम इज अवेलेबल ऑन, it is on death estate, lifetime gifts made within 7 years before the date of death, or lifetime gifts where the donee has agreed to pay the tax arising. The assets to which the installment basis applies are given to you, and note that a business or an interest in a business would usually qualify for 100% BPR. If so, no tax is due. यहाँ पे क्या बोल रहे हैं? There are certain assets like land wherever situated, shares or securities in a company where the transferor controlled the company immediately before the transfer, या फिर business or an interest in a business, shares of an unquoted company with a value in excess of 20,000, इसमें से कुछ भी होगा तो on IHT relating to that particular part, you can pay the amount of IHT in installments. ठीक है. So that is and इस पे there have been times when they have asked you questions. These are the due dates for payment. Make sure that you go through these. I always consider due dates as a place, as something which can help you move from that 80 to 90 wala zone, because if you get the due dates right now, then there is no place where you can actually lose marks. तो एक बार देख के चले जाना. There is a concept called gifts with reservation of benefit. Now, what are gifts with reservation of benefit? Say, for example, I have given a gift to my son. I have gifted the house to my son, but I continue to live in the house till my death. So, while I have given the gift, I continue to use that asset for my own purposes. I continue to stay there. These are known as gifts with reservation of benefit. ठीक है. A gifts with reservation of benefit is a lifetime gift where the legal ownership is transferred, but the donor retains some benefit in the asset gifted. In a gifts with reservation of benefit question, treat the gift as PET and do not include in death estate. Include the gift in death estate, not as a lifetime transfer. In normal cases, you do not get to decide whether the asset gifted should be treated as PET or as a part of death estate. But in gifts with reservation of benefit, आपको दो ऑप्शन मिलता है. आप चेक करो whether this particular where will it get, where will the tax implication be high. If you treat it as PET and you do not include in the death estate, will the tax implication be higher there? Or if you include that in the death estate and not as a lifetime transfer, in आप चेक करो कि कौन से इसमें IHT implication is lower and you go for that particular option. And this choice of whether to include that in a lifetime transfer or whether to इंक्लूड दैट इन द डेथ एस्टेट, ये जो चॉइस है, ये जो ऑप्शन है, ये सिर्फ आपको गिफ्ट्स विद रिजर्वेशन ऑफ बेनिफिट के केस में मिलेगा. देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन, प्रिया आपके नाम से ही क्वेश्चन है, सो देयर इज वन क्वेश्चन, एक बार ये क्वेश्चन देख लेना. ओके, नाउ क्विक सक्सेशन रिलीफ. Quick succession relief is, when deaths happen in very short span of, each other. QSR applies where an individual dies and within the previous 5 years they had inherited an asset on someone else's death and IHT was charged on the inheritance, or received a lifetime gift and IHT was charged on the gift. अब QSR का फॉर्मूला वेरी सिंपल. QSR is IHT on first death into appropriate percentage. The appropriate percentages are years between first transfer and date of death. ठीक है, 0 1 1 2 2 3 3 4 4 5. अब जितना that gap is less ना, उतना आपका appropriate percentage is high. The farther you move, आपका value keeps on reducing. Now, IHT paid on the first death is either given in the question or can be calculated as follows. How do you calculate that? Total IHT paid on first death estate upon gross chargeable estate value of first death into value of asset gifted out of the first estate. So basically, I gave a gift to, so I received a gift in someone's death estate. कोई मर गया and in that process I received a gift from that particular person's death estate. Now on that, so what I'll have to do is I'll have to take the gross chargeable estate value and I'll have to consider कि gross chargeable estate value 2 lakh पे कितना IHT पे किया. Say it is 35,000. Now in respect of this gift, what is the proportionate IHT? I will have to calculate that using this formula and then IHT on first death into appropriate percentage gives me my quick succession relief. Quick succession relief is given before double taxation relief is given. Double taxation relief जो है वो हमने कल एक बार देखा है. So when we are doing QSR calculation, IHT on first death into appropriate percentage, these percentages are not given in the paper. So how do you calculate? What you have to do is IHT on first death निकालो. IHT on first death कैसे निकालेंगे? डिनोमिनेटर में ग्रॉस चार्जेबल एस्टेट वैल्यू, न्यूमरेटर में IHT paid on the entire death estate into value of the asset that I received out of that estate. You will get the proportionate IHT and then you develop that calculation further. Okay. Then और क्या है इसमें? Like there are some valuation rules and variation of a will वाला part है. So वो so deed of variation में you will have to specifically say that we are changing the will for the purpose of CGT and IHT only. तो वो एक theory part है, पढ़ लेना because a theory question from that might come. But apart from that, IHT मोटा मोटा अपना सारा कुछ डिस्कस हो गया. ओवरसीज एस्पेक्ट ऑफ IHT हमने कल ही डिस्कस कर लिया था. ठीक है. So that's pretty much everything that is there in inheritance tax. Naturally, this is a, अब think about it. In the actual class, we must have spent how many hours, yeah? IHT, in my opinion, 3 full classes and थोड़ा here and there. ऐसे करके 15 hours तो we must have spent on IHT ना. तो उसको 2 घंटे में summarize करना is basically reading out the provisions and showing you a question here and there. Now, your job is to learn the provisions, learn them by heart at any cost. And whatever questions you have, abhi stick to the provisions. Abhi Don't apply your mind. I'm telling that on a repeated basis. अपना दिमाग गलती से भी मत लगाना, आप गड़बड़ हो जाएगा पेपर में. ठीक है? Cool. So, thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow.